The twin sister of suffering is called joy. You cannot understand suffering from the Christian point of view unless you look at it from the perspective of joy. But on the other hand, you cannot understand Christian joy unless you look at it from the perspective of suffering, of pain. So, suffering only becomes heavy when you separate it from the joy of discipleship. I'll give an example that it is not really the Lord's will that we suffer. How many mysteries do we have in the Rosary? We used to have 15, now we have 20, thanks to St. John Paul II. What are the 20 mysteries? Divided into 5, joyful mysteries, mysteries of light, sorrowful mysteries, glorious mysteries. Look at the 4. There are 3 mysteries that are about joy. And there is only 1 mystery that is about sorrow. There are only 5 mysteries for sorrow and 15 mysteries for happiness. So we should look at the sorrowful mysteries in life from the point of view of the joyful, the luminous mysteries, and then the glorious mysteries. So we cannot, as I said, we cannot talk about Christian suffering separated from the joy of Easter. So, nasabi ko na yun, tingnan natin ngayon yung suffering. Merong suffering na kailangan. Meron ding suffering na hindi kailangan. Yung suffering na hindi kailangan, ito yung suffering na idinudulot sa atin ng kasalanan. The effect of sin is really suffering. The effect of sin is injustice. The effect of sin is lack of peace. The effect of sin is sleepless nights. The effect of sin is broken relationships. Sin causes suffering. But not all suffering is a fruit of sin. An example of that is our Lord Jesus Christ. He never sinned, and yet he embraced so much suffering. So there is necessary suffering, there is also unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering is the suffering that our foolishness brings upon us. Necessary suffering is the sharing in the passion of the Lord, which is for the salvation of the world, for the forgiveness of sins. Bring it down. For example, we fast. Fasting is a form of voluntary suffering. But the Christian point of view of suffering is when you fast, you must make sure that the food that you do not eat is given to the poor. Because if you do not give to the poor the food that you did not eat, it is Good Friday, you don't eat meat. And then you eat meat on Black Saturday. That is not fasting, that is postponement. You're just postponing the eating of meat. On Good Friday, the meat that you should not eat, the meat that you will not eat, should be given to the poor, who practically have no protein for the rest of the year. So that is why suffering is accompanied by the joy of giving. So if we do not learn the habit of giving, we will not be able to understand the meaning of voluntary suffering. So, in my sharing with you earlier, I told you that we cannot avoid it. Part of life is being pained, being hurt, being disappointed. And part of marriage is the reality that you are disappointed with each other. And part of priesthood is also being disappointed in my own ordination. We cannot have 365 days of exciting days. Sabi ng poet, into each life some rain must fall. But when it rains, remember, our farmers have taught us that beautiful lesson. When it rains, it means that the heavens come down to kiss the earth. So when it rains on your party, it does not mean that God did not answer your prayers for good weather. It only means that God blessed your party because the heavens came down to kiss the earth on your party. So we must understand suffering from the point of view of joy. So what is the twin of suffering? As I said, it is joy. And during this pandemic, we have become a depressed people, lonely people, people who are battling with meaninglessness. The opposite of depression is delight. The opposite of depression is delight. And how do we discover delight? Number one, do not look for it. Because if you look for delight, it will run away from you. Delight is discovered. And delight is lived by living like God. Jude and Therese, when I tell you to live like God, I am not telling you to be domineering, to be bossy, to be lording it over, parang utos ng hari, hindi mababali. That's not the point. When I tell you, if you want to live happy, if you want to live with delight, if you want to live with joy, live like God, because the next thing I will tell you is, does God ever get depressed? And the answer is, God does not get depressed. Why does God not get depressed? Because God keeps on loving selflessly. So if you soak yourself in selfless loving like God, you're going to discover the delight of suffering, the delight of self-giving. And then suffering does not hurt us anymore. Suffering becomes the wellspring of our joy.